just over 12 months as an iOS app. And I think really what we're doing is bringing training-based nutrition to a new level. And I think syncing with Training Peaks today's plan and Final Surge certainly is making a big difference to the way in which we're fueling the athletes. And Elizabeth?
Hi, nice to meet you. It's kind of similar to Scott's background in terms of working with endurance athletes. Been in the sport of triathlon for a very long time. Primary focus, I would say, is aside from daily nutrition, really fueling athletes during their season, making sure that they're eating enough, the proper things, the importance of blood work, and really understanding the way that your body works and how food kind of interacts with that and taking that message home.
So the big thing today, Scott, is we'll just go through what we're thinking in terms of post-season nutrition, how it differs from, in-season nutrition and what the focus should be, and really getting athletes to think about what their focus is. So I think the first thing we always talk about is like, don't test, don't guess. So I think the post-season period's a really great period of time for people to get some assessments. And two of those assessments that we would be recommending would be around blood testing, and then from a body composition standpoint, looking at DEXA scan or, some type of assessment on body composition, and DEXA would be our preferred measure. So in terms of bloods, this is obviously a screenshot from Inside Tracker. Inside Tracker is a very useful visual tool, I think, for athletes to use. It's not a necessary tool, but it does certainly make it easier to explain trends over time for athletes. In terms of this panel on the far right-hand side is the panel that we recommend. Not all those tests are actually covered by Inside Tracker in terms of being presented in their data. So some of them we would look at on a case-by-case scenario. The way we do it is that our middle and our upper tier have that as part of their program. The autopilot, which is the lower tier in the Fuelin program, would need to have a consultation book to go through their blood tests. But they would also get the information through Inside Tracker, and if they're comfortable with that, they can do that. I think our preferred way is you just upload the results into Inside Tracker using their, I think it's called Upload Results tier, which is about $80 or $100 for the year. And I think it's very good in terms of doing that. So it's certainly, if an athlete has the ability to have a doctor that will do these blood tests, and we provide this list of blood tests for the athlete to get, then it's very simple for them to go and get it. As you would probably understand and know, some of these markers are related to health, some of them are going to be related to performance, and ultimately a healthy athlete is going to be a high-performing athlete. So things like iron status is going to be very important for an endurance athlete, especially a female endurance athlete, but also for male athletes. Vitamin D3 status going through into winter is going to be important, from immune function, psychology, muscle function, heart function. There's a number of sort of correlations of vitamin D status and what it can mean to the athlete. Things like the omega-3 index is going to be more related to health, and so on with lipids, and things like the fasting glucose and HbA1c. But all very important. And I guess, again, the focus for Fuelin is not just focusing on race day performance, but looking at the athlete as an entirety, and looking at them as being healthy, not just fueling for a race day. And then I touched on DEXA. So Elizabeth, do you want to just go over that?
Yes, sure. And I think, Scott, particularly for your coached athletes, taking the time to actually get the blood work and the DEXA scans done, giving them this information that they might not have prioritized otherwise because they are new to the sport. And now, before, the season kicks off, it's really the time that they get some of this information, and it might encourage more consistent training, more consistent eating habits. Like, it might be that if they see like, oh, my this vitamin level is low, or, oh, my A1C is high, I need to make some improvements. Or if they're doing the DEXA, oh, I could make changes in body composition. So these very, informative, helpful tests, I think, could correlate very well with consistency and in your coaching, and really provide them some value that they might not be expecting otherwise. Like, they're coming for the coaching and getting like a life health hack in a way.
Right.
Like get the blood work and the scans.
How often do you guys like recommend doing these tests, redoing these tests throughout the season? You know, do you guys really only focus on it in the off season, or do you guys do it like every quarterly or every macro cycle? How do you guys kind of recommend it?
Well, certainly I'll just talk from the blood. I think the blood, you've got two opportunities in the year. You do it before, so the postseason period is a good opportunity to establish that baseline. Now, obviously, if deficiencies or insufficiencies are identified and then you go and implement some sort of either supplementation or nutritional intervention, you then want to retest at a certain period of time. So if vitamin D is low and you instigate a supplementation regime, or say with heme iron supplementation, you would probably retest in somewhere between 8 and 12 weeks to see if that's had an impact. So you're not going just another 6 months before seeing if you've had an impact. Now, if everything was fine, you would probably leave it at least 6 months to go through. But I think for an endurance athlete, especially someone doing 70.3 and Ironman, that I think 2 tests 6 months apart would certainly make sense to ensure that everything is on point and you're, you know, as healthy as you can be. You know, there will be kickback from some sides of the medical fraternity that will say that's overkill, but I think, you know, what an endurance athlete is doing in this case, like as a 70.3 Ironman, is not normal.
They say Ironmans are overkill. So
exactly. So I think you're trying to do something that is outside the norm. So, you know, I don't think the norm necessarily fits this type of population. DEXA scans, again, look, if something was really wrong or there was an issue there, then you would certainly look to get one done more than at least every 12 months. And if you were looking to actually make noticeable changes to body composition, i.e. losing fat mass, improving visceral fat, and that, you would probably look at, again, a 12-week sort of period where you might do another test, and periodically you might look to do up to 3 in a 12-month period. So maybe 1 every 4 months if that person requires that. But, you know, for an athlete that is in relatively, you know, you say good health from a body composition standpoint, that their fat mass index, lean muscle mass index, visceral fat, so on, percentage of body fat is all good, and their bone mineral density is fine, once every 12 months would be absolutely fine. But it's a mark in the sand as well to give you the practitioner, I think, as much information as it gives the athlete, and it makes your life easier to help with, as Elizabeth said, direction. Do you have any questions about that before we go into the next bit?
No,
Cool.
no.
Okay.
I think it's all good.
Cool. And Laura, I saw you jumped on. Sorry. Hello. How are you? You're on mute at the moment, but we'll keep going.
Okay. So when looking at, you know, this time of the year, improving body composition is often something that athletes are looking to do. And it's also the time of year that we recommend that the focus can shift from performance and daily training stimulus to improving body composition. The components, if you're looking at improving body composition, there's kind of 6 big areas. The first being managing fat intake. Fat is very calorically dense and often easy to overindulge in. A couple handfuls of nuts and seeds can turn into quite a few. Extra serving, you know, a little more oil here and there in your cooking. And if we're trying to get a caloric deficit, then managing that fat intake is crucial. Being smart about carbohydrates. Scott and I both talk about the importance of carbs, so we're never going to recommend having no carbs, but it is a time during the year when training volume and intensity are lower. And if we're looking to work on body composition, that we can be more strategic and smart with the carbohydrates. So potentially bringing in something like fasting, doing some lower intensity training sessions fasted, and or being smart about having carbs either before or after training, and then limiting them at other meals throughout the day. Leaning into strength are real components of the importance of strength training, not just for health and longevity, but also adding muscle mass and decreasing fat mass. And strength training is the best way to do that. Maintaining movement in the off season, just because training stimulus changes doesn't mean that, you know, we can stay inside where it's warm and cozy. As a coach, I know you know that. Finding some kind of activity every day, you know, whether it's walking, hiking, cross-country skiing, whatever that may be. Tracking your food. This is something that we encourage a lot of times. If athletes haven't made that a priority before, they're often either missing big components, and tracking the food will help them see, oh, I really don't get enough veggies in. Oh, I really don't have enough protein during the day. Or for body composition specifically, here's where those excess calories are coming in that I wasn't mindfully aware of. So it works on both sides, encouraging to make positive changes, but also finding some of the areas that could use improvement. And then eating enough protein. Most athletes and people in general aren't eating enough protein. And when working on body composition, that is the macronutrient that we focus on. And in eating enough, but also upping that amount of protein during a strength building body composition phase is really what they want to focus on. We have some guidelines there to the side. Protein at a minimum is approximately your body weight in pounds. The fat is about half. And carbs, it kind of depends on each meal. We use the traffic light system at Fuelin, so 30 grams or less at a meal for carbs is the red, the yellow is 50, and the green is 100. So those will be, the green meals will be more sporadic throughout a body composition phase.
Do you have any questions about that, Scotty?
No, I think no, it makes sense.
Cool. And just so you know, those the grams of carbohydrates are specific to meals rather than the entire day. So yeah, that's how we structure it. And we'll give you an example of how that looks.
Now, I guess when you, I know this is kind of goes back and forth on a couple different thoughts, but when you talk about someone who may be trying to decrease weight, decrease mass in that off season, when you're looking at those, and you're trying to maybe think doing a calorie cut or anything like that, do you still just kind of base those same macronutrients based on the current weight, or are you going down at that point trying to cut out of there and change kind of the quality, or keep those numbers where they're at, or do you just kind of adjust that based on just where those goals are, or do those, you know, kind of number of grams stay pretty consistent?
So I mean, the grams will be based on their current weight. But then the overall calories would be based on where they're trying to get to, based on their purpose and the training volume. So they certainly in this phase, and as we said here, like, you know, I think there is that big distinction between, you know, trying to lose fat as a goal versus trying to race competitively. And I think that's where athletes need to make that distinction. And if we are going to put you into a body composition focus, then expect that you're going to be in a caloric deficit, and therefore you're probably going to have lower amounts of calories provided to you. So potentially you want to adjust your training appropriately to that. But yeah, it certainly will be a different focus in terms of total calories. So I think in terms of, you know, and this touches on what we just said. So what is the purpose of training? The purpose of training is going to be lower volume, potentially a bit of higher intensity, but certainly lower volume, so that the individual athlete isn't going to be so fatigued. Somewhere between a 6 and a 12-week focus, probably 6-week training blocks, 5 to 6 week training blocks would be in there. The macronutrient split, as we said, would be slightly different, probably a little bit higher in protein, a little bit lower in fat, and certainly we'd be manipulating carbohydrates, and that would probably be the primary macronutrient that we'd manipulate to allow the individual to go into a caloric deficit. generally fat and carbohydrates are the ones that you want to manipulate, keep protein high for satiation and also retention of lean muscle mass. And that caloric prescription, as we said, will be lower, but that should be offset by a reduction in total training volume compared to what the normal triathlete or Ironman athlete would do. And then the way we've got it set up in the Fuelin app is that they do have an option for time restricted feeding. So they can choose that option of between 12 and 8 o'clock at night to consume all their calories. And again, it's not to say that time restricted feeding or fasting or anything like that is a magic trick. It's just a tool in the toolbox to allow someone to stick in a caloric deficit. And then this really comes down to the way in which we talk about this. And I don't know who prescribes all the S&C for you guys with Toro?
If it's just kind of the generic S&C stuff, Jason and I have kind of developed a handful of our programs, like just kind of generic cross training stuff. If it's anything that may be injury recovery, off-season mobility, addressing any dysfunction, imbalances, that kind of stuff. Usually any of the athletes or any of the coaches will send their athletes over to me for an injury screening, and then I'll develop one kind of in Training Peaks, and I'll make a custom one for them.
But purely from a strength conditioning perspective for body composition focus, you guys have a program for that or not?
Yeah, a lot of it's ones that we've developed our own, or we've kind of tweaked some kind of prefabricated ones that are out there, just to kind of get our system on there for most of the strength conditioning.
So I guess the main point, what I'm getting across is if there are Toro athletes there that can utilize an existing strength and conditioning program through you guys, then they should do that. And they just need to put that they're doing weights training into their Training Peaks, which I'll show you in 2 seconds. If an athlete doesn't have a strength and conditioning program, then we would recommend Craig or Matt as 2 strength conditioning coaches that I've had a lot of experience with and are very good at their craft. The other option that athletes can use is just training app, and then obviously put as a weights training session into their Training Peaks or today's plan or final surge, and make sure that's updated with an intensity score. So what that would look like is, as you can see here, this is my next week's training program. You can see on a Monday, I've got strength in for an hour on a Monday, a Wednesday, and a Friday. And that's all that needs to be put in. From our perspective, as long as the athlete has their strength conditioning program, they can do it that way. Some companies and some teams will put the full training details into Training Peaks. I don't know if you guys do that. So you could do that as well, and have it that way.
We have I say kind of 50-50, where if it's an athlete that isn't doing any strength training on their own, I'll develop programs in there for a lot of our athletes. But then obviously we have a handful of athletes that also do CrossFit or do yoga classes. And so when they do that, I always tell them that I go, you can put it in and then just add in that strength session. And then usually in the comments, I'll have them do a quick kind of synopsis of what they put in. But that way I tell them that I want them to track it so we can see how long it is, see what their heart rates are, how much intensity are they at. So we make sure it still gets tracked on there.
Yeah. So the main thing from our perspective, all we need to know is that strength is put in for the duration and with an intensity score. We don't actually need to know what they're doing. We just need to know that they're doing it on those particular days, so we can plan that into the Fuelin app. And then again, it is a very different focus. Training to lose fat is very different from training for an endurance event. We all know that. And I think it's just, again, emphasizing that for athletes.
So with our body comp program specifically, we wanted to lay out some markers of who this program is really for. And this is for health purposes, kind of outlining if you have any of your athletes in mind, these are some of the parameters. If they have a body fat percentage for men greater than 12%, females greater than 20, their fat mass index for males greater than 6, females greater than 8. The visceral adipose tissue, if that's greater than 80 centimeters. When looking at their bloods, their total cholesterol to HDL is greater than 3.4, that ratio. The LDL is above 100. The benefits of improving body composition for cholesterol and the A1C, there's a direct connection there. So it might be the perfect program for someone like that if their A1C is above 5.7, which is that marker, kind of that minimum baseline. They call it pre-diabetic. So for type 2 diabetes, that's that bit. And then their training as their coach, if you're looking at it and you know they're going to be doing Monday through Friday, less than or at about 10 hours. If they have 2 to 3 weight sessions a week, a couple cardio zone 1-2 sessions, and then maybe 1 to 3 HIIT sessions in there, then this program could work very well and it would be recommended for them to see changes in body composition. And then on the flip side, I don't need to go through all of this, but the key distinctive factor for who the program wouldn't be healthy or wouldn't be a good idea for, without speaking to either Scott or myself first, is someone with a history of disordered eating, any mental health issues, any medical issues, whether that's any heart conditions, any type 1 diabetic, obviously a pregnant athlete. So again, if some of the DEXA validated scores in training, if there's any in between there, but if you have any of those athletes where dieting could be a trigger, or food, or any kind of disordered eating, that's where you really want to be careful and specific. And then phase 3, I'm a big proponent of this, especially at this time of year. And I think this is a take-home message that all of your athletes can do. Now is the time during the off season when they have the extra time, when their focus isn't specifically on training and performance. This is when you want to kind of create the Fuelin kitchen. And the steps are taking an inventory. What do you have? What do you need? What tools are in your kitchen? Organizing it. Are your cabinets the way, that you're cooking? Are the spices near here? Do you have all of these things that you need? Are your pantry and freezer stocked? We ask athletes to then check their Fuelin plan. Okay, what are my macros for the week? What am I going to be doing? Looking at their calendar, family activities, training, work, developing that meal plan, making a shopping list from it. And then some of the things that we recommend to make life easier for athletes: cooking in bulk, meal prep, obviously, freezer and pantry partners. Those are those things, whether it's the microwavable rice, cans of beans, anything that they can have to fill up in bulk meals that can be ready almost immediately.
Right.
Tracking their progress, and then something that makes this time of year especially fun, and when you're working with a team, are sharing the results. And as a community, if you have a once a week call with your athletes, or if you have an email sending out to them, maybe you send them a picture of your kitchen and how you're working on it, and just the community aspect of encouraging healthy habits. That's what kind of helps people transform and want to make changes, and makes this part of it fun. Because if they can master these things now, then when they're back in training and their mind shifts to the performance focus, they have all of these things ready and in order.
Yeah.
Is that a dog in the background?
That's why you keep seeing my mute go on and off. If my bulldog is snoring.
I was like, I swear that's a bulldog. It must be a bulldog. So yeah.
Yeah, I have 4 that are sleeping at my feet right now. So
wow.
my bulldog is snoring. So that's why I keep hitting the mute button on and off.
No, that's cool. So really the way we've structured Fuelin is around these 3 pillars: that it is simple, it's personalized, and it's results driven. So everything is about being very functional and easy for the user, and removing decision paralysis, so that eventually the athlete can just see, the red, the yellow, the green, and know exactly what type of fuel and how much of that fuel to use for that particular session, based on the purpose, the intensity, the duration of that specific session. It syncs in with your coaches or your team's coaching plan, so that the athlete knows exactly what to eat and when to eat it, based on the training that you're providing them. And in terms of the feedback loop, lots of testing and lots of data entry that the athletes can get involved with regards to sweat rate testing, carbohydrate capacity testing, tracking, their food intake, tracking their weight if they want to, and looking at those types of measures. And then I think in terms of the other add-on to the program, which is more related to this, is that once the system works, once they've got it all synced up, there is also that community feel that we offer, which is, an hour's call every week. We do it tomorrow. We have it, which is an Ask Me Anything. The first Thursday of every month, we do an Ask Me Anything session, which any of the athletes that are on the program have the ability to sort of link in with Elizabeth, myself, and ask us anything, and we get all those questions submitted early. So that's how the program works. In terms of something that really relates to this off-season period is the ability now for athletes to really hone in and provide individual sort of configuration around what they're after. So as you can see in the left-hand corner, which is a real screenshot of the app, is, what is their primary purpose? Is it performance? Is it body composition? Where are they in their training? Are they in season or are they post season? Do they want to use this time restricted feeding? What's their goal weight? What's their current weight? How aggressive do they want to be in losing that? And then even if they select that they don't want time restricted feeding, are they happy to do the first session of the morning, potentially in a fasted state? And that again would be dictated by the duration of that session. If it's short enough duration, we will allow fasted, and especially in the post-season period. This is just an indication and some screenshots from the app with regards to carbohydrate capacity testing. So you can see at the top, on moving from the top to the bottom, the athlete can choose what type of temperature they're in, what intensity they're in, and then we will give a step-by-step sort of account of what their average intake is based on fluids and solids, based on a grams per hour and a grams per kilo of body weight, and then spread it out into what they're consuming in solids and fluids, and then provide them with also some information around, are they suffering from any GI discomfort? The middle screen is a synopsis of what the actual session was, so that the user can actually go back through that and look at what was actually consumed and how the session went. And then this is a screenshot of the actual how the program would work. So the user just taps on the meal cell, and that brings up a number of options for them. So they can favorite certain meals, and we certainly see this with athletes, that they have the ability to favorite meals, and often, something as simple as toast in the morning, which I've never understood why people shy away from it, because it is actually a very good pre-workout snack, but apparently it's not fancy enough. But certainly based on the color will be the amount of carbohydrate recommended to them. So in this case, it's a yellow snack. You can see that's around 40 grams of carbs. The average for a yellow snack is around, on average, 50 grams of carbs. But some of the meals will be slightly different in terms of that. And every time they select one of these meals, that would be deducted from the daily recommendation amount of macronutrients and calories. As you can see, this athlete has quite a lot going on. They've got 3 sessions in the day with a swim and then a solid brick session. So they are being recommended to fuel before, during, and after all their sessions to enable them.
So,
question?
Yeah. I want to make sure I wasn't on mute. One of the things I was kind of curious about this. So when it comes up, so obviously on that interface where it says, moderate carb snack, and we see that thing right there. When you click on that, does that give you examples of snacks and of meals that kind of fit that, or is it just here's the macros and good luck trying to find something that's kind of that fits in that category?
So when they tap on that snack, if they tapped on that snack, one of the options there would have been the wheat toast with almond butter jelly.
Oh, okay.
The rest of the options will be specific to the carbohydrate amount. So there might be a wheat toast option with a jelly. There might be a white toast with a jelly. There might be bagel. There could be banana.
Gotcha.
whatever fits that macro color.
So you'll get the options like that fit into whatever that macro guideline is for that time of the workout.
Say that again.
So there'll be like a list of options for that kind of fit in whatever that general outline of the macros are. Gotcha. That's one of my athletes that asked me about that, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that it's not just like hit a snack and it says, have a snack with 10 grams of, 10 grams of protein, 10 grams of fat, and best of luck figuring out what that is versus,
so we will give options, but the athlete also has the option to track via MyFitnessPal and Lose It as well. So if they're tracking, say they've got some weird, I don't know, some weird sort of pre-workout snack that they love that we don't have in the app, they can track that through MyFitnessPal. Say it was like a applesauce jaffle or something like that they wanted to eat. Yeah, weird, but athletes do that. If they wanted to do that, then they could track that through that and they could have it. And as long as they're getting in their recommended amounts of carbohydrates, then they would be fine to do that. And that would be deducted from their daily amounts. So yeah, it's all pretty straightforward. It's pretty intuitive. They have the options of tracking in multiple different ways. They can track, as we said, through MyFitnessPal, through Lose It. If they want to use an external tracker, they can track within the app using the meal suggestions. They can also track within the app using the hand sizing options. So we have in the app things like a hand of protein or a cupped hand of carbohydrates and what that means in terms of macronutrients and examples of food types that would fit those hand sizing models.
Okay.
So yeah, it's fairly, as we say, athletes find it very intuitive, and they find it very easy to sort of navigate once they get the idea of what the color codes mean, the colors mean for each meal, and how they will fit with what meals they select, and it becomes very easy.
And so, kind of back to the the original. Sorry, I'm trying to I repositioned so my dog wasn't snoring in the the microphone. So, kind of tying it back into the original thing about being in postseason. I'm assuming that it all kind of you guys adjust it based on whether the athlete's in postseason, preseason, whether they're peaking, and is that just based on feedback from the athlete? Or is that just based on being able to see on training peaks when the next event kicks in? Or
that's this screen.
Oh, okay.
So they're picking what's their primary purpose? Is it performance or body composition? Are they in season or post season? And
gotcha.
So if it's that, if they're in season and they're in performance, we're not going to put them in a caloric deficit because their focus is purely performance and they're in season. If they pick if they pick body composition and in season, then we would apply a caloric deficit to them, even though they're in season, because their focus at that point in time, they're telling us that they want to improve their body composition. So, and you'll see that the I button up the top, when an athlete presses that, it gives them some pretty detailed information about what to select and why they might choose that selection, i.e. expect if you're going into a body composition purpose, then expect to be in a caloric deficit, and therefore your performance may not be as good as if you were fully fueled.
Okay. I guess that was going to kind of be my next question is, obviously I get being in Phoenix, we have athletes that race year round and train, like there's there's not really a true off season here just because, we're either racing in the winter or we're training in the winter to race for a spring and summer race, in nicer weather. But, I guess what do you guys consider when we talk about that in season versus postseason and strength training? How far out of an A race or how far out of a big endurance event do you guys kind of make that shift over to in season? I think you guys kind of deem it as 12 weeks or 16 weeks for an Ironman, 12 weeks for a 70 or?
Yeah,
you know,
it's not.
I may get an athlete that has a, you know, a 70 in March and a marathon in August, and then Ironman Arizona in November, and it's like, despite us saying that's not the best way to set your calendar up, obviously athletes are going to be athletes.
Yeah, it's not really our call. It's
Right.
I think you sort of hinted at it. Like, it's really up to the coach and the athlete. Like, you got to pick an off season. You can't just keep. They can do it for a year and then they'll break down.
Yeah,
like you just got to be really harsh on them about.
And obviously from a coaching standpoint, I have that all. You know, I have that talk with enough of my athletes of pick a damn race and stick to it. But I don't know if you guys had kind of like you know, we shift into a in season model of periodization or however you guys set it up. You know, X number of weeks out of a main race, or you know.
I mean, again, it would be based on what the coach really is saying, or the athlete's saying, is like picking that and going, okay, I'm 10 weeks out, I'm switching to performance now, and then focusing on that. But our program would be dictated by the athlete and the coach. In that sense, we wouldn't be telling them, right, you're in off season now and you got to do this. Like, that's not our role. We're there to support the coach and the athlete in their decision on what their focus is.
Gotcha. Now, I guess I do have a question just on kind of your guys' program in general, not necessarily about this about the off season fueling, but with the way you guys have that set up, tied into Training Peaks, to say, you know, here's your pre-workout based on this. You know, how does that work for, you know, like I fully admit I'm not the best at always saying, okay, I'm going to do this workout. You know, if it's I have a, you know, say I have a 60-minute swim, you know, and not knowing whether I have that in the morning or have that in the night, or sometimes I got to call an audible because work shifts things around. You know, are your guys' fueling plans in there malleable to when, you know, when you kind of have to call an audible within a day or within a 24-hour notice of changing, not necessarily training, but changing when the training occurs?
Yeah, you can just edit your program and rerun it.
Okay.
You can edit it, rerun it. We'll generally get the program done in, you know, once the baseline program's done, you can rerun it and it'll be updated, you know, within 10 to 30 seconds.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Based on that. So it's super quick to do that. So it's not a problem.
I was always curious about that, just because obviously I was going to be reaching out to you guys as I get back into everything, kind of get on it as an athlete with you guys, get programmed. I was like, I pissed Jason off all the things. Jason actually coaches me, and I piss him off all the time because I was like, okay, get your swim in before work. I'm like, I slept in, I missed it. I ran over at lunchtime to get it done, or
so you just need to adjust it. And something we're working on is that the next iteration we're working on, just so you know, is that athletes, once the initial baseline program is set up through Training Peaks or Today's Play and whatnot, you'll then be able to just edit and move within the Fuelin app at the click of a button, click and drag, and just update intensities and times a day and things like that, which will be a big change for athletes when they're on the go like you and they miss things and don't do things. So yeah, don't worry.
Gotcha.
Cool.
I always joke. I said if I had to rank myself within my own athletes, I'm the worst when it comes. I'm worse than all my athletes are when it comes to, you know, okay, I have my swim in the morning, I get up early and do this, and my training's all over the map. But you know, I actually had a long conversation with Jason even just last week, because I was supposed to be racing Kona in 23. So I told him, I said, okay, I'm going to get everything dialed in because I'm coming off of a really bad hip injury. I said, okay, I'm going to dial everything in. I'm going to hit 2023. We're going to, you know, go all in and get all set up. And then found out yesterday that they canceled Kona for the men for next year.
I just saw it now.
Not canceled, just adjusted.
Shifted location.
Shifted it, but they're going to give us all the option to, if we want to do Kona, we can defer to 2024, because Ironman has yet to actually validate that the men are going to be racing in Nice. Everybody else is saying that it's Nice on September 10th, but Ironman has yet to actually solidify it. They sent an email to everybody that said, we'll let you, the women are racing in January. We'll let the men know when and where the world championship will be. We don't know when it is. But you'll have the option to do it. So we kind of already told him, I was like, I think I'm just going to defer to 2024 because I actually may wind up having to have a hip replacement within the next 3 to 6 months. Like I was going to be milking through needing a hip replacement prior to Kona. Like I joked that I was going to get off the plane after the race back in Phoenix and walk off the plane and go straight to a surgical center and have my hip redone. So now I kind of put a whole wrinkle and everything, but that was one of the things once I hit January, I'm actually relocating to Chicago. My wife and I are moving out there and getting set up out in Chicago for everything here in a few weeks. And so I told him once I got set up, I was actually going to reach out to you guys and just get on a plan, because as an athlete, my nutrition is hands down my weakest spot. I'll go through and I'll do all the training and whatnot, but that's one of those do as I say, not as I do, that I've always struggled. My wife has gone through. She had disordered eating. She was an athlete training through a lot of stuff, and she's been through counseling with RDs and with nutrition based psychologists, psychiatrists on a lot of things. She still is in counseling. So we go back and forth in our house on a lot of meal planning, and you had to go through all that. And I said, I've worked through a lot of it from her standpoint of proper dietary workout, but having to kind of do it to a peaking triathlete doing long course. I wind up doing one of those, like, I know what I need to do, but I suck at it. And I get, kind of when I have to make the decision, it's I know I should, but hey, you know what? I'm gonna get a donut and Dr. Pepper because it's just quicker and easier, because I, not having the accountability. So I joked that I was joking with Jason before, even before I came on with this. I was like, I feel bad that I'm, struggling that I had 10 quick minutes. So I'm literally eating Raising Cane's right before I got in, because it's literally what was accessible for my nephew had a fundraiser. So I was like, I just gotta kind of jump on there. But I know that's my big weak spot, especially. And I love the fact that this was the topic. I'm heartbroken that we didn't have more of our athletes in on this, because I know how many of them were. We had our team meeting 2 weeks ago, and we were kind of, when your email originally came out, we were hyping it up, and I was like, dude, I'm excited about this, because this is where I suck the most at. And so I was, I'm excited to kind of get set up and kind of see what you guys are doing with this and get rolling in, because I think this is all really crucial stuff, and I love what you guys are doing. So I'm really excited to kind of see how this will all work, since now my off season just got extended by 12 months.
Yeah, cool. No, very good. Look, we'll share the recording with you, and you can share it with your team. You and Jace can share it with the team and the other athletes, and then if there's any questions, we can take it from there.
Sounds good. I really appreciate you guys' time.
No, perfect. Thanks, Scott.
Great.
We'll speak to you
Have
soon.
some concentrated time with you, Scott.
I loved it. Thanks. You guys have a great night.
Thanks, man.
Great morning,
Bye-bye.
wherever you guys are at.
Night.
Bye. Whew. Stop recording, Jay.